I hear the words through the cracked door before I even knock. Brooke Halston is presumed deceased. The voice belongs to an attorney I've never met. He says it like he's reading a weather report. Flat, calm, completely unbothered. But those 4 words hit me like a fist, because Brooke Halston is me, and I am standing in this hallway breathing just fine. I flew in from Denver this morning after a friend sent me one text. They scheduled the trust meeting without you. I didn't call ahead. I didn't stop to eat. I grabbed my bag, my passport, and the scarred bracelet I've worn on my left wrist since I was 16, and I got on the first flight available. Now I'm here, in the carpeted hallway of Renwick and Associates on the 14th floor. The door to conference room B opened just enough for me to see inside. My sister Colleen sits at the far left of the table. She's pressing a tissue to the corner of her eye. Her mascara is perfect. Not one smear. She's been practicing that look. Tessa, my wife, sits to Colleen's right, with her hands folded and her eyes pointed down. She hasn't moved. And then there's Patrice, Tessa's mother. She sits at the head of the table like she was born there, spine straight, chin lifted, watching the attorney slide a thick folder across the polished wood. The label reads, Halston Trust Distribution, $825,000. Colleen's hand reaches for it, her fingers close around the edge. I push the door open. It swings wide. Every head turns. I walk to the table and look my sister straight in the eye. Put your hand down, I say. I'm right here. The room goes completely still. Colleen's face drains of color so fast it's almost frightening. Her mouth opens. Nothing comes out. Tessa still doesn't look up. Then Colleen points at me like I'm a stranger who broke in off the street. That's not her, she says. Call security, now. I want to explain something before I go further, because none of this makes sense unless you understand who I am. My name is Brooke Halston. I am 54 years old. For most of my adult life, I did everything I could to stay out of the spotlight that came with my grandfather's name. Bernard Halston built a freight shipping company from nothing and turned it into one of the largest logistics networks on the East Coast. By the time he passed, the trust he left behind was worth over $800 million, and my name was written in as a primary beneficiary. But I never walked around acting like the money was mine. I had a career, a small consulting firm, 5 people, steady and honest work. I had a routine. I had what I believed was a quiet, stable life. I married Tessa 11 years ago. We were different in a lot of ways, but I thought we balanced each other. She liked events and social dinners. I liked early mornings and long silences. We had Owen together. He's 23 now, careful and a little guarded, which I always assumed was just his personality. Then 14 months ago I was in a car accident. A driver ran a red light on a highway exit ramp and hit my car on the driver's side. I was airlifted to the hospital, spent 6 weeks in the ICU, then 4 months in a rehabilitation center 3 states away. Recovery was slow. There were days my hands shook so badly I couldn't hold a fork. Days when simple words slipped out of reach mid-sentence. But I got better. I worked hard every single day, and I got better. What I didn't know, what I had absolutely no idea about, was that while I lay in that rehabilitation bed fighting to recover, someone was filing paperwork to declare me gone forever. The attorney looks at me from across the table with very careful eyes. Miss Halston, he says quietly, why is there a court-sealed death petition with your spouse's sworn statement attached to it? The 2 security guards step into the doorway and plant themselves like a wall. The attorney, his nameplate reads August Wren, holds up one hand and tells them to wait. He studies me with careful, neutral eyes. Not angry, not convinced, just careful. I am not asking you to leave, he says slowly. But I also cannot pause this meeting or redirect any trust assets without verified proof of identity and confirmed living status. Do you understand what I'm saying? I understand perfectly. Colleen is already shaking her head, leaning toward Patrice, who nods along with a thin smile. I reach into my bag. My hands are trembling, not from fear, but from the specific kind of deep anger that lives low in the body and takes a long time to burn all the way through. I pull out my passport first and place it flat on the table in front of him. Then I pull out my medical discharge papers from the rehabilitation center, dated 6 weeks ago, signed by 2 attending physicians. My name, my photograph, my full file number. Mr. Wren picks up the passport and studies it closely. Date of birth, he asks. March 9th, 1971, I say. Place of birth? Greenfield, Virginia. He nods slowly and keeps reading. Then I reach up and lift my left wrist. There's a bracelet there, thin silver, dented in 2 places, with a small engraved flower on the center link. I've worn it every single day since my 16th birthday. It was a gift from my grandfather. My full name is scratched into the inside of the clasp in his own handwriting. Colleen's jaw tightens the moment she sees it. She knows that bracelet. She has always known it. Wren reads the engraving and sets the passport down on the table. Then Tessa, who hasn't said a single word since I walked in, speaks for the very first time. She doesn't look at me. She looks at the table in front of her. Her signature changed after the accident, she says quietly. That's all I'm saying, it changed. The attorney steps out and returns with a printed copy of the court filing. He places it flat on the table between us. I read every word in less than 3 minutes. It is a death petition filed 8 months ago in Ansel County. The grounds listed are prolonged absence, inability to communicate, no confirmed contact for over 60 days, and reasonable belief of death following a catastrophic accident. At the bottom, under the section labeled Supporting Declarations, is Tessa's name. Her signature is there in blue ink, clean and certain. She swore under oath that she had received no confirmed proof I was alive, that she had made repeated attempts to reach me and received no response, that based on her personal knowledge and the medical information available to her, it was her genuine belief that I was gone beyond reasonable doubt. I look at Tessa. She still won't look at me. Patrice leans forward and folds her hands on the table like she's running a business meeting. Brooke, she says, her voice smooth and practiced. We mourned you, all of us. You don't simply get to walk back in and disrupt what has already been put in order. This is about healing. I want to say many things. I say none of them. Mr. Wren clears his throat and announces the meeting is formally postponed. He cannot proceed with a distribution while a living beneficiary is present who disputes the petition. He will notify the court, and all parties have 10 days to provide documentation. 10 days. I put the papers down and reach into my coat pocket for my phone. I need to call an attorney immediately. The screen lights up with a notification from the Halston Trust secure portal, the one I've had access to since my grandfather died 4 years ago. The message is 4 words. Your access has been revoked. I take a cab to the house because I gave up my car before I entered rehabilitation. Tessa drives home with Patrice. I watch their car disappear around the corner, and I feel a cold stillness settle over me that has nothing to do with peace. Our house is a 4-bedroom colonial on Ashwood Drive. I bought it before Tessa and I were even married. My name is on the deed. I paid the mortgage for 8 years before it cleared completely. I walk up the front steps and put my key in the lock. It doesn't turn. I try again. Nothing. The locks have been changed. I'm standing on my own front porch when the door opens from the inside and Patrice appears, wearing a cream blouse and tailored trousers, looking at me like I'm the one who's out of place. She lets me in like it's a favor. The inside of the house has been rearranged, furniture shifted to new positions, throw blankets I've never seen draped across the couch. The family photos on the mantle are still in their frames, but when I walk closer, I see it. My face has been cut out of every single one, not taken down, not put away in a box, cut out with scissors, so that every photo shows Tessa and Owen and Patrice standing beside empty spaces where I used to be. My safe is gone from the home office. My personal files, 8 years of tax records, property documents, and legal papers, are gone from the filing cabinet. The cabinet is still there, sitting in the same corner. It's just completely empty. I stand in the middle of my own living room and breathe. Tessa appears in the doorway from the kitchen and keeps her voice low, like she doesn't want Patrice to overhear. Just don't make this ugly, she says. Before I can answer, there is a knock at the front door. A courier hands me an envelope. Inside are guardianship papers with my full name printed at the top. The word guardianship looks completely different when it appears beside your own name. I read every page standing at the kitchen counter while Patrice moves behind me, rearranging things that don't need rearranging. The document states that I am a person in need of protective assistance due to cognitive impairment following a traumatic accident. It lists symptoms in careful clinical language: confusion, poor judgment, emotional instability, and significant memory gaps. It describes me as someone who cannot be trusted to manage her own affairs. Colleen is listed as the proposed guardian, the responsible family member who will step in to manage my medical decisions, my finances, and my legal matters until I am deemed stable. Patrice has signed a supporting statement about my unpredictable mood swings and concerning behavior since the accident. Tessa signed it too. I set the papers down very carefully so I don't damage them. I pull out my phone and scroll to a name I've had saved but never called: Landon Shaw. He's an estate attorney with a strong reputation in this state, calm, thorough, and according to everyone who's used him, completely impossible to rattle. A former colleague described him the same way every single time. He doesn't bluff. I call him from the driveway, standing beside a flower bed that still has my name spelled out in river stones from when Owen was 7 years old. I tell Landon everything in 9 minutes. The meeting, the death petition, the locked portal, the changed locks, the missing files, the guardianship filing. When I finish talking, the line is quiet for a long moment. Then Landon Shaw says 5 words in a flat, even voice. This is a coordinated takedown. He doesn't say it dramatically. He says it the way a doctor reads an X-ray result. Clear and matter-of-fact and very serious. He tells me to get to his office first thing in the morning with every document I have and not to sign anything at all until we speak face to face. I hang up and look back at the house I bought with my own money. Every single light inside is still on. Landon Shaw's office is on the 2nd floor of a narrow brick building downtown, with a window that faces a parking structure and a sky that hasn't decided whether to rain. No artwork on the walls, just bookshelves, a large desk, and a whiteboard covered in blue marker notes I can't quite read from my chair. He reads through everything I've brought in 40 minutes and doesn't say a single word the entire time. Then he opens his laptop and begins typing before I can speak. He files a formal legal request for the complete attachments to the death petition right away: the original filing, every supporting declaration, and all documents submitted as evidence of my death. He wants the full picture before we make a single move. What comes back 2 hours later is a death certificate number. I have no grave. There was no funeral, no burial service, no cremation record, no memorial plot. The cause of death line reads pending, and the remain section says only one word: unclaimed. Someone built a paper trail that ended with me as an unclaimed body, and nobody came looking. Landon leans back in his chair and stares at the document. His expression stays even, but something shifts behind his eyes. They move too fast, he says. When people rush a legal filing of this size, they make mistakes, they get sloppy, they leave fingerprints all over the paperwork. What kind of fingerprints? I ask. He turns the laptop to face me and points to a date stamp in the upper right corner of the filing. This petition was submitted 9 days after you were admitted to the rehabilitation center. You were still in the ICU recovery wing. He pauses, letting that settle. Someone knew your exact timeline. They were watching and they were ready. Then he closes the laptop and says the 4 words that press cold against the back of my neck. We need the medical examiner file, today, before it gets misplaced. Colleen calls that afternoon. Her voice is soft and slow in a way that takes real practice to get right. She says she's glad I'm alive. She says she never stopped hoping. She says the whole situation with the petition was a misunderstanding, that she was simply trying to protect the family's interests during a time when I was completely unreachable. I sit on the hotel bed and let her talk. She gets to her actual point after about 4 minutes. She says there is an offer, a settlement. She doesn't call it that. She calls it a comfortable arrangement between family members. If I agree to step back from the trust proceedings, stop contesting the petition, and allow the distribution to move forward as planned, I would receive a private payment. Enough to live well for the rest of my life. But not enough to have any real say in how the trust is managed. Not enough to touch the properties. Not enough to control anything that matters. It's a fair offer, Colleen says. Patrice thinks so, we all agree. I don't respond right away. An hour later, Tessa sends me a text message. Just 2 words, no punctuation. Please sign. That night, I sit in the hotel with the curtains open and watch the city below. I think about my grandfather, Bernard Halston. He used to say the worst mistake a person could make was confusing kindness for weakness. He said people who truly loved you would never ask you to give up what belonged to you. I think I understand now why he built the trust exactly the way he did. I am about to send Colleen a short reply, something polite, something that buys me a little more time, when her voice comes back to me from the end of the call. Right at the very last moment, so casual it almost didn't land. "Oh," she had said like an afterthought. "There's actually a clause in Granddad's trust that you've probably never actually read." Landon pulls the full trust document the next morning. It is 140 pages. He works through it with a yellow highlighter and a legal pad, and by 10 o'clock he finds the section Colleen was referring to. It's buried in Article 11, subsection 4, under the heading Continuity Provisions. The language is dense, but the meaning is straightforward once you strip it down. If a named beneficiary is declared missing, legally incapacitated, or presumed dead, control of their portion of the trust does not freeze. It transfers temporarily to a designated continuity steward. This person manages distributions, approves expenses, and oversees all decisions related to the trust until the legal question is fully resolved. I look at the steward line, Colleen Halston. My grandfather named Colleen as the continuity steward in the event that something happened to me. He most likely meant it as a gesture of family loyalty. A backup plan for genuine emergencies. A just-in-case built on trust. What he never planned for was Colleen being the one creating the emergency herself. Landon explains the rest carefully. The stewardship doesn't activate the moment a petition is filed. There's a mandatory waiting period built into the trust language. A window of protection designed specifically to prevent a rush takeover. During the waiting period, nothing can move, but the petition was filed 8 months ago. The waiting period started the day Colleen submitted that filing. Landon sets his pen down and looks at me across the desk. "How many days are left?" I ask. He picks up the pen and writes a number on the top corner of the legal pad. He turns it around so I can read it. 12. 12 days before Colleen's stewardship activates under the trust terms, giving her temporary control over everything my grandfather ever left me. I look at that number for a long moment. "Okay," I say. Then we move. I don't fall apart. I make a list. The first thing I need is proof. Solid, documented, professionally signed proof that I am mentally and physically capable of managing my own life. The guardianship petition claims I am impaired, unstable, and confused. I need paperwork that says otherwise. Not opinions and not feelings, but licensed clinicians putting their names on official evaluations. I call my doctor, Dr. Sark Farrow, who treated me during the last 2 months of my rehabilitation. She schedules a full cognitive and psychological evaluation for the very next day. Then I call Nadine, my managing partner at the consulting firm. I explain what I need, and she doesn't ask a single unnecessary question. She sends back a formal professional statement in 3 hours. 2 pages, single-spaced, covering everything from client satisfaction scores to the contract I closed just last month while working remotely. Her conclusion is simple and direct. I am sharp, reliable, and fully operational. Then I call the rehabilitation center and ask them to prepare a complete discharge summary. The summary confirms everything I already know. I was alert, oriented, and improving on every single measured marker during my stay. My therapist signed off on my discharge with no concerns. The progress notes show a clear upward line, week after week. But then I get to the final paragraph. There is a notation at the bottom, added by the clinical coordinator in plain, careful language. Notation for record. The patient's spouse declined multiple formal visit requests during the treatment period. A total of 7 scheduled visits were canceled, with no rescheduled appointments made. I read that line 3 times. 7 canceled visits. Not forgotten ones, not delayed ones. Canceled. I forward everything to Landon. He calls back within 5 minutes. "This is good," he says. "All of it helps, but listen carefully." He pauses. "If they realize we're building a case, they will try to plant something to knock it sideways." 2 days later they plant something. Tessa produces a document through her attorney. an authorization form she claims I signed before the accident. It supposedly grants her broad access to my personal accounts, my medical records, and my legal files. Her attorney submits it as evidence against the guardianship challenge, and Landon receives a copy by midday. I look at the signature at the bottom of the page. It's close. Genuinely close. Someone studied my handwriting carefully, either from a document I signed during my hospital stay or something older. The letter shapes are similar. The slant is nearly right. The loop on the capital B almost matches mine. But there are small things my eye catches immediately. The pen pressure is completely even across the whole signature. My real signature never works that way. I always grip harder at the end of my last name, and the ink goes slightly heavier at the finish. This signature is smooth and consistent all the way through, beginning to end. It was copied. Carefully, patiently copied. Landon doesn't argue with Tessa's attorney. He doesn't accuse anyone of anything directly. He simply states that standard legal procedure requires him to verify the document's authenticity, and he orders a professional handwriting analysis from a forensic document examiner named Boyd, someone the courts in this district know and trust completely. Boyd receives the document that afternoon. He calls the next morning before 9 o'clock. "I've reviewed this twice," he says, his voice carrying the careful flatness of someone who is choosing every word deliberately. This signature was not produced naturally. The stroke pattern is inconsistent with a signature written under normal conditions. The pen movement indicates copying, someone carefully replicating a known sample rather than signing their own name. He pauses briefly. "They were thorough," he adds, "but not thorough enough." Landon says quietly, "Good. Now we go to court." The guardianship hearing is on a Thursday morning in a county courtroom that smells like carpet cleaner and old paper. Colleen arrives wearing a dark dress and an expression she has clearly practiced in a mirror. She takes the stand and produces what look like real tears. She talks about how frightened she has been since the accident, how she watched me struggle from a distance, how she only wants to make sure I'm properly protected and that no one takes advantage of me while I'm still recovering. Patrice follows. She sits up straight, hands folded, and describes me in the measured language of a person who has rehearsed carefully. She calls me fragile, reactive, not quite myself. She gives specific examples, moments when I seemed confused, moments when I said things that didn't add up, moments when I appeared to be a different person entirely. Then Tessa takes the stand. She speaks quietly, and the quiet itself is what gets under your skin. The kind that sounds like genuine pain, the kind that sounds like someone who doesn't want to be there but feels she has no choice. "She's not the same," Tessa says. "Since the accident, she's just not the same anymore." Then Landon stands up. He doesn't raise his voice at any point. He submits 3 documents, one after another, clean and organized. First, Dr. Farrow's full cognitive evaluation completed 4 days ago showing 0 impairment. Second, Nadine's detailed professional statement about my work performance. Third, Boyd's forensic report on the copied signature. The judge reads each one in full. The courtroom is very quiet. Then the judge looks up and denies the guardianship petition. Completely denied. Colleen goes absolutely still. Patrice presses her lips into a line. But before I can take a full breath, Colleen's attorney rises from his chair and speaks in a voice that is calm and deliberate. Then we challenge her status as a living beneficiary of the trust. Landon had already requested the medical examiner file, and it arrives that same afternoon in a slim manila folder. The death petition required physical supporting evidence. Since there was no confirmed body, Colleen had submitted what she called circumstantial physical evidence of death. This included items supposedly recovered near the accident scene that matched clothing I was wearing that day, a general physical description provided by Colleen herself, and one attempted dental chart comparison. I look at the dental comparison carefully. It doesn't match me. The root measurements are wrong. The position of the 3rd molar is wrong. One section of the chart marks a filled cavity in the lower back left, and I have never had a single cavity in my entire life. My dentist in Denver has my complete records going back 21 years. Every cleaning, every checkup, every set of x-rays, not one cavity, not one filling. ever. The height estimate in the examiner's report is also off by nearly 2 full inches. Landon submits a formal request for a review of the identification process and attaches my complete dental records from Denver as direct contradiction. He also files for an emergency hold on any trust changes while the review is still pending. The judge grants the hold immediately. For the first time since I walked into that conference room days ago, I see something change in Patrice's face. Just a small tightening around the eyes, the look of someone who felt a cold wind coming from a direction they weren't watching. The trust stays frozen, no movement allowed. Then Colleen's attorney speaks again and requests a brief delay in the proceedings. New evidence is coming, he says. I watch Colleen stare straight ahead with a steady expression. She doesn't look scared. Somehow that worries me more than if she did. The new evidence turns out to be a character attack. Colleen files a stack of medical records from my time in rehabilitation, pages pulled from my worst weeks and presented completely out of context. Pages where the nursing staff documented nausea, severe headaches, disorientation, and deep fatigue. Pages where I wasn't sleeping. Pages where the pain medication left me foggy and slow to respond. She submits these as evidence that I am permanently damaged. That what those early nursing notes captured is simply my baseline. Not the rough opening weeks of recovery from a traumatic brain injury. Not a temporary medical condition being actively treated by a full clinical team. My permanent, lasting condition. Landon responds the same afternoon with the complete medical record, all 4 months, in order, from the day of admission to the day of discharge. Every page properly labeled. The recovery arc is absolutely clear. Week by week the fog lifts, the test scores improve, the pain levels drop. The nursing notes shift steadily from concern to measurable progress. At the same time, Patrice starts making calls. Owen tells me about it when he phones that evening in a careful, stiff voice. He says extended family members, cousins, and aunt on Tessa's side, an old family friend who has known us for years, are all saying the same thing. That I'm unstable, that I'm making wild claims for money. That the real Brooke Halston was never going to fully recover, and what I'm doing now is the behavior of someone who desperately needs help. Tessa says nothing publicly. In many ways, that silence is louder than any lie. I sit with Landon after the day's hearing and lay out the full picture. He listens without interrupting once. Then he sets his pen down and looks at me. They're losing the legal ground, he says. So they're shifting to softer ground. Your relationships, your reputation, your family. He meets my eyes. They'll go after Owen next. Owen calls 3 days later. I can hear the distance in his voice the second he says hello, and it's not the distance of physical miles. It's the distance of someone who has been told something that changed the way they see you. He says he's been thinking a lot, that he's heard some things, that he doesn't want to pick sides, but some of what Colleen has told him doesn't match up with how I've been acting since I came back. I ask him to tell me exactly what Colleen said. He goes quiet for a moment. Then he explains that she told him I left the rehabilitation center on my own, against medical advice, because I became paranoid and convinced myself that everyone around me was working against me. She told him I've been building a legal case, not because I was genuinely wronged, but because I want more money, and I'm willing to tear the whole family apart to get it. She told me you never once called me from rehab, Owen says. Not a single time. I go completely still. I called Owen every Sunday for the entire 4 months I was in that rehabilitation center. Every single Sunday without missing one. We talked about his job, his apartment, a book he was reading about wildlife photographers in the Arctic. I still have every call log on my phone. I tell Owen that calmly without any desperation in my voice. I ask him to check his own call history. He goes quiet again. Then he says something small and careful that shifts the direction of everything. Aunt Colleen came to the lake house last month, he says slowly, like he's working something out as the words come. She said she wanted to collect a few things. She mentioned your old tablet, said it had photos she wanted to keep. He pauses. But she didn't take it. It's still in the upstairs closet. I saw it myself. Another pause. Mom, he says, I think she left it there on purpose. I think she was planning to come back for it. Landon files for a legal subpoena on the cloud account linked to that tablet first thing the next morning. He explains clearly that we have to do this the proper way. No guessing passwords, no asking Owen to access it informally, no shortcuts. We get a court order and go through the correct legal channel. That is the only way anything we find will hold up in court. The judge grants the order within 24 hours. Owen brings the tablet to Landon's office in a paper bag, and a digital specialist extracts the cloud backup through a court-authorized process. The backup has been running automatically for years without anyone managing it. It contains deleted messages, voicemails, photos, and call logs that synced to the cloud before I was taken to the hospital. We go through it carefully and in order. Most of it is exactly what you'd expect. Family photos, grocery reminders, an old half-finished letter to Owen I never sent, voicemails from my grandfather that I've listened to so many times the recordings feel worn smooth in my memory. And then there's a voicemail from Colleen. The label reads, "Urgent, call me back." It was recorded the night before the death petition was filed. The specialist plays it through the office speakers. Colleen's voice fills the room. She doesn't know she is leaving a record of anything. She thinks she is leaving a quick message on a dusty tablet in a lake house closet that nobody checks. She speaks fast, like someone running through a plan that's already been decided. "Get Tessa to sign," she says. "Tell her it's now or never. Say Brooke's gone, that the doctors said there's no coming back. Get her to sign the declaration and we split it, equal, like I promised. But she has to do it tonight." The voicemail ends. The room is completely silent. Landon looks at me across the desk. He doesn't say anything. He doesn't need to. I don't confront Tessa at the house. Landon says doing it that way would be a mistake. Anything said in an emotional, private setting can be disputed later, reframed, or twisted into something it wasn't. He arranges a neutral location instead. A small conference room at the office of a certified mediator he trusts, with a court reporter present to document every word said by everyone in the room. Tessa agrees to come. I'm not entirely sure why. Maybe she's exhausted. Maybe she already knows what's coming whether she shows up or not. She looks thinner than I remember. She sits across from me with her hands wrapped around a paper cup of coffee and doesn't speak for the first 2 minutes. We sit there together, Tessa, Landon, the reporter, and me, in complete silence. Then Tessa starts talking. She doesn't look at me while she speaks. She tells me that Patrice first brought up the idea months before the petition was ever filed. That Colleen came to her with a plan that was framed as practical and even caring, not cruel. They told her the accident had changed everything, that the medical outlook was genuinely poor, that the kind and responsible thing was to move forward and make sure Owen and Tessa were taken care of. She says she panicked, that after so many months of uncertainty she began to believe it when they told her I wasn't coming back. "I told myself it wasn't really a lie," she says quietly. "I told myself I was protecting our family." I don't respond to that. Then Tessa's phone buzzes on the table between us. She glances at the screen and her face shifts. She silences it quickly. But from my angle I can clearly read the name on the screen. Patrice. The phone buzzes again. Then again. Tessa presses her lips together and finally looks directly at me for the first time since I walked back into that conference room. "There's another document," she says in a low voice. "One I notarized for Colleen 2 months ago. I didn't read all of it before I signed." The notary stamp on Colleen's documents leads us somewhere unexpected. There are 2 notarized filings Colleen submitted alongside the death petition. A supporting declaration and a secondary property access authorization. Both carry the same official stamp, the same registration number, Notary Public, State Registration Number 4471B. Landon runs the number through the state licensing database. It belongs to a retired notary named Walter Grimm. He was licensed and practicing for 31 years and officially surrendered his commission 14 months ago. His seal, his stamp, and his registration number are no longer legally valid for any purpose. Landon finds Walter's contact information and calls him directly. Walter answers on the second ring. When Landon reads him the registration number from the court filings, there is a brief silence on the line. Then Walter says, "I don't know what you're describing to me, but I surrendered that stamp and that seal when I retired. I walked them into the licensing office myself. I signed the surrender form. I have a personal copy of that form in my filing cabinet. He isn't confused. He is furious. Someone had taken his old registration number, most likely lifted from an older document that still carried his stamp, and used it to certify filings that Walter had never laid eyes on. His professional name, his credential, his 31 years of clean work, all attached to documents he had never touched. Landon files the new evidence with the court that afternoon and requests sanctions against Colleen's legal team for submitting fraudulent notarizations into an active proceeding. The filing lands with real weight. By the next morning, Colleen's attorney calls Landon and asks for a private conference. Landon tells me the conversation was brief and mostly consisted of the attorney asking how serious the situation actually was. Landon told him it was very serious. For the first time since this began, Colleen is no longer looking at me like she holds all the cards. Then, the very next morning, a new filing arrives at Landon's office. Colleen has submitted an emergency protective order against me, claiming that I threatened her personally. 2 county deputies appear at my hotel door at 8 in the morning. They are professional and polite. One of them explains that a protective order has been formally requested and that they need to inform me of the terms while the court reviews the application. I let them in without hesitation. I offer them coffee. I stay completely calm. Landon arrives 20 minutes later. He comes in carrying a laptop and a small USB drive, and he doesn't say much. He simply sets up the laptop on the small writing desk by the window and pulls up the security footage from Renwick and Associates, the law office where I first pushed open that conference room door over 2 weeks ago now. The footage is time-stamped, and the camera angle covers both the main hallway and the lobby exit. The deputies watch it with me. On the screen, I walk into the conference room. I speak. I stand still with my hands at my sides. I never raise a hand. I never step around the table or move toward Colleen. I don't touch anyone. When it ends, when the Colleen on the screen is pointing and shouting while I stand without moving, I turn and walk calmly down the hallway and exit the building without looking back. Colleen, however, follows me into the hallway. The footage catches her clearly, shouting after me as I walk away. At one moment she steps forward in my direction. I never once turn around. The deputies exchange a quiet look between them. Before they leave, the taller one informs me that filing a false protective order report is a serious legal matter, and that they will be following up with Colleen's attorney directly. I close the door and sit on the edge of the bed. Outside in the parking lot across the street, I had noticed Patrice earlier, standing beside a dark sedan, watching my window like she was keeping track of something. Then my phone buzzes. It's my bank. Miss Halston, someone just attempted to change the recovery email address on your personal account. We flagged it automatically. Are you the one making this change? Landon contacts a forensic accountant named Ellery the same afternoon. The trust is frozen, which means no major distributions can move. But Landon explains that frozen doesn't mean invisible, and he wants Ellery to go back through every single transaction connected to the trust since the day that death petition was filed. Every payment, every transfer, every fee, every label. Ellery comes back 3 days later with a document that runs 12 pages. Colleen has been collecting what she calls estate administration fees through a small consulting company, an LLC registered in her name under a slightly different spelling. The payments are labeled as project management, advisory services, and document preparation. Each individual payment is small enough not to draw immediate attention, but when you add them up across 8 months, the total is just over $400,000. Patrice's name appears on a separate stream of transfers labeled reimbursements. What exactly is being reimbursed is not clearly documented anywhere. Tessa's name does not appear. That is the only detail that gives me a moment's pause. But it is Ellery's final note that makes the breath catch in my chest. The fee collection has been building towards something specific. There is a large payout scheduled, structured to move through the same consulting LLC in exactly 5 days. It is formatted to look like a routine authorized distribution from trust administration. Ellery circles the dollar amount in red ink. $11 million. This is not messy bookkeeping. Ellery tells Landon during the call. This is a designed extraction plan. It was built to look like ordinary administration until the stewardship window activated. At that point, the amounts would have grown significantly. The 5-day payment was the first major test of the system. Landon files immediately for a broader asset freeze and sends Ellery's full report to the court that evening. They weren't only trying to take the trust in one move. They had already started taking it, quietly, piece by piece, while everyone watched the big door and missed the small one opening behind them. The trustee meeting is scheduled for a Wednesday morning. Landon and I arrive early and take seats on the left side of a long conference table inside the offices of the trust's independent administrator, a law firm named directly in my grandfather's original documents to handle distributions and resolve any disputes fairly. 3 administrators sit at the head of the table. Colleen arrives with her attorney and settles directly across from me. She does not look cornered today. She looks composed and prepared. That makes me careful. The meeting moves through procedural items for the first 20 minutes. Then Colleen's attorney places a document on the table and slides copies to the 3 administrators. We'd like to introduce a recently discovered codicil to the trust, he says. A codicil is a formal amendment, something added to a will or trust after the original is signed, with its own notarization and signatures. It can change distributions, add conditions, or remove rights. This one supposedly reduces my share. The language is formal, but the meaning is clear. Due to the beneficiary's history of unreliability and instability, my grandfather had allegedly amended the trust to reduce my portion by 60%. The room goes completely quiet. Even Landon's jaw tightens for just a half second. I catch it. Colleen folds her hands on the table. Her expression is very close to victory. If this document is genuine, none of the rest matters. Landon can win every court motion, expose every fraud, and undo every fabricated filing. And the trust would still direct the majority of my inheritance away from me before I could ever access it. I look at Colleen across the table. She looks back without blinking. Landon reaches over and picks up the codicil without a word. He reads the first page slowly, then the second. Then he sets it down with a quiet, deliberate motion. He looks at Colleen's attorney. We'll need full authentication, he says calmly. If it's real, we discuss our next step. If it's not. He lets the pause hold for a long moment. She's finished. The authentication process takes exactly 3 days. Landon sends the codicil to 2 separate forensic document experts, one who specializes in ink age analysis and one who focuses on paper composition and historical document verification. Both work independently with no contact between them. The notary on the codicil is a licensed professional in Ansel County named Henry Oakes. Landon reaches him by phone on the first afternoon. His response is immediate and certain. I have never notarized anything for Bernard Halston or for any member of the Halston family, Henry says. Not once. That registration number is mine, but I did not place it on that document. I have never seen that document. Strike 1. The ink age analysis comes back on the second day. The process measures the chemical breakdown of ink over time and can place a document within a reasonable age range. The codicil is dated 3 years before my grandfather's death. The ink is not 3 years old. It is between 12 and 18 months old, maximum. Strike 2. The paper composition report arrives on the 3rd day. The examiner identifies the specific paper stock used, a premium weight legal paper with a distinctive watermark pattern. The manufacturer's own records confirm that this particular paper stock was not commercially available until 11 months ago. A document dated years before the paper it was printed on even existed. Strike 3. Landon files all 3 reports with the court that afternoon, alongside a formal request for sanctions against Colleen's attorney for submitting a fabricated legal instrument into active trust proceedings. Colleen's attorney, who has been steady throughout everything up to this point, looks like a man searching hard for the nearest exit. The judge issues a ruling the following morning, a full asset freeze. Everything connected to Colleen. Personal accounts, the consulting LLC, Patrice's transfer streams, every account linked to either name, locked immediately pending the broader investigation. That afternoon, a real estate agent calls Landon's office. Colleen has just listed her lake house for sale. The judge's response is not gentle. The attempted lake house sale triggers a formal contempt of court warning, delivered through Landon as a direct notice, with no room for interpretation. Any attempt to sell, transfer, or move assets while the freeze order is active constitutes a direct violation of the court's authority and will bring immediate legal consequences. Colleen pulls the listing within the hour. The accounts stay completely frozen. Patrice calls me that evening. I almost let it go to voicemail. But something about the way the phone keeps ringing, once, then stopping, then starting again almost immediately, makes me answer. Her voice is not the version I know from conference rooms and courtrooms. The careful, regal posture she carries in every room does not survive phone lines, and without it, she sounds older. The sharp precision she uses when she believes she has control is completely gone. She is furious, but underneath the fury is something else entirely. She is afraid. "Do you have any idea what you've done to this family?" she says. I let a moment pass before I answer. "I know exactly what I've done," I say. "Everything we had. Everything you had," I say quietly, "was built on a plan to erase me. You watched my name get cut out of my own photo frames. You signed documents calling me unstable. You stood in my living room and called it healing." She goes silent. "I didn't steal anything," I continue. "I didn't hurt anyone. I walked through a door and told the truth." She hangs up. I put the phone down and sit in the particular quiet that follows a long fight when the other side finally stops swinging. Landon calls 30 minutes later. His voice carries something I haven't heard from him before. Something that sounds like careful, contained satisfaction. "I just received a notice," he says. "The county prosecutor wants to meet with us." A pause. Criminal review has been formally opened. Colleen makes one final move before the prosecutor's meeting. She sends the terms through her attorney. She won't appear in rooms where evidence sits on the table in front of her anymore. The offer is detailed. I agree to a full settlement, withdraw all criminal complaints and civil claims, except a portion of the trust that amounts to roughly a quarter of what my grandfather actually left me. And in return, Colleen stops contesting my status and makes no further legal challenges. She labels this a path to resolution. Patrice calls an hour after the offer arrives with her own version of the same message. She tells me the family can still come back from all of this, that Owen needs his family to be whole again, that I've made my point clearly, and now it's time to allow people to begin healing. Then she says something that cuts through every layer of composure I have been wearing for weeks like a second skin. "You can still be loved," she says, "if you stop this." The silence on my end must say enough, because she doesn't continue. I sit with that sentence for a long time after we hang up. You can still be loved if you stop this. I think about my grandfather sitting somewhere alone with his attorney, drafting a trust worth over $800 million, thinking carefully about what might one day go wrong with the people he loved most. I think about the fact that he planned for it anyway. I call Landon. "No deals," I tell him. "I don't want the settlement. I don't want a quiet resolution. I want the truth documented, on the record, in full, where it cannot be rewritten later." There is a brief pause on Landon's end. "Then we trigger the sealed letter your grandfather left," he says. The sealed letter has been locked inside the trust since my grandfather died. The trust instructions are specific. Open it only when there is a formal legal dispute over a named beneficiary's status. We have exactly that. A court-documented dispute, forged documents, and an active criminal review. Every condition is met. The administrator opens the envelope in the judge's presence, one handwritten page. Formally witnessed, dated 4 years before his death. He writes that he loves his family but is not blind. He has noticed certain patterns over many years and fears that after he is gone, someone may try to remove another beneficiary through dishonest means. He states the consequence plainly. Any heir who participates in removing another heir through fraud, false declaration, or misrepresentation forfeits their entire share of the trust, permanently, without appeal. He also notes there is a recorded video statement. The administrator plays it on a screen at the front of the room. My grandfather fills the screen. He sits at his own desk, the one with the brass lamp I remember from childhood. He looks into the camera with steady eyes, He says he is making this recording because he fears someone in his family may fake a death to rush the trust. He has specific concerns about one person. He says Colleen's name. Across the room, the color leaves Colleen's face. She pushes up from her chair. The judge tells her to sit down. That video is not real, she says. Her voice cracks. That is not him. The forensic authentication is already in the court file. The judge rules. Colleen is permanently removed from the trust. Her forfeited share goes where my grandfather directed, a protected fund for Owen that no one connected to Colleen or Patrice can ever reach, and the rest to a charitable foundation in my grandfather's name. I file for divorce that same afternoon. Not from anger, from clarity. Trust cannot survive a funeral your spouse willingly signed for you. I walk out of that courthouse into clean afternoon air. I am alive. I am legally restored. And for the first time in 14 months, I am not afraid of anything at all. If this story hit you somewhere deep, if you've ever been underestimated by the people who were supposed to protect you, or if you know what it feels like to have your voice taken away by someone who smiled while they did it, then you already know why Brooke's story matters. This is the kind of story we tell here. Real stakes. Real consequences. Real people who refuse to fold. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next one. Because the stories coming are even more powerful than this one, and you don't want to be the last person to hear them. And before you go, drop a comment and tell me, where are you watching from? And what part of Brooke's story hit you the hardest? Share this with someone who needs to hear that staying quiet can be the most powerful move you make, and that the truth always finds its way to the surface, no matter how deep someone tries to bury it. We'll see you in the next one.